Japan has the highest concentration of centenarians on Earth, and one of the lowest rates of Alzheimer's disease among industrialized nations. Researchers have spent decades trying to isolate the dietary factor responsible. The 2026 Senior Food Pyramid has now placed two specific Japanese food compounds at the top of its cognitive health recommendations for adults over 70. One you've probably heard of, one most Western adults have never tasted and may never have encountered at all. Both are available online and increasingly in health food stores. Before we go further, a clear disclaimer. This video is educational and based on published neuroscience and the 2026 Dietary Guidelines for Americans. It does not constitute a treatment for Alzheimer's disease or any cognitive condition. If you or someone you love is experiencing cognitive changes, please seek evaluation from a qualified healthcare provider. What you are about to hear is nutritional science, not a cure. You who take your health seriously already know that what you eat is not separate from how your brain functions. You have seen that connection in your own life. A bad week of eating and your focus drops. A morning with real food and your mind is sharper before the first hour is over. Now imagine that relationship playing out not over days, but over decades. And you begin to understand why the Okinawan data stopped the scientific community in its tracks. The Okinawan paradox has fascinated nutritional scientists for generations. In a prefecture of Japan where traditional dietary patterns persisted well into the late 20th century, residents regularly lived past 90 with intact cognitive function. Walking, conversing, engaging with their communities in ways that most Western adults in their 70s cannot manage. The question was never whether diet was responsible. The question was, which specific elements of the diet were doing the protective work? The 2026 Dietary Guidelines are now providing the most specific answer yet. The first compound is DHA, docosahexaenoic acid, an omega-3 fatty acid found in concentrated form in sardines, mackerel, herring, and salmon, and consumed by Japanese populations at levels 2 to 4 times higher than the typical Western adult. If there is a single dietary fact about the brain that deserves to be known by every adult over 60, it is this. DHA is the primary structural lipid of the human brain. Not a nutrient that supports the brain. Not something the brain uses for energy. It is the physical material from which neural membranes are built. Every neuron you have, every synapse that fires when you think a thought or recall a name, is wrapped in a membrane that is approximately 30% DHA by composition. When dietary DHA is inadequate, the body does not leave those membranes empty. It substitutes the next available omega-3 fatty acids in the queue, primarily omega-6 fatty acids from vegetable and seed oils, into the membrane structure instead. The result is a membrane that is less fluid, less electrically efficient, and substantially less capable of the rapid signal transmission that underlies cognition, memory retrieval, and executive function. This substitution happens silently, over years and decades, and its effects accumulate well before any clinical diagnosis is possible. Some researchers have estimated that the neurological changes that lead to Alzheimer's begin 20 to 30 years before the first recognizable symptom. The Western diet has been delivering abundant omega-6 and deficient omega-3 since the mid-20th century, largely due to the rise of industrial seed oils and the parallel decline of fatty fish consumption. The 2026 Dietary Guidelines identified this ratio, the omega-6 to omega-3 imbalance, as one of the most consequential dietary shifts in modern history for aging brain health. Correcting it does not require supplements. It requires fatty fish, 3 or more servings per week. The same pattern observed in Japanese populations with low Alzheimer's rates. Have you ever tried natto, or even heard of it before this video? Tell us in the comments, and share this video with someone whose family has a history of Alzheimer's or dementia. Now, DHA also drives the production of a class of molecules called resolvins, specifically resolvin D-series compounds, which are synthesized from DHA during inflammatory processes. Resolvins do exactly what the name suggests. They resolve inflammation, not suppress it, which is what anti-inflammatory drugs do, often with significant side effects. Resolve it, meaning they actively signal the immune system to terminate the inflammatory cascade and begin tissue repair. In the brain, where neuroinflammation is now recognized as a central driver of Alzheimer's progression, this resolution pathway is not a secondary benefit of eating fish. It is one of the primary mechanisms by which DHA consumption protects neural tissue over decades. The practical implication: sardines, mackerel, herring, and wild salmon, 3 to 4 servings per week. Canned sardines with the bones count. Canned mackerel counts. The bioavailable DHA in these foods is identical to what you pay a premium for in fish oil capsules, and it arrives with protein, vitamin D, calcium, and selenium, none of which the capsule provides. The 2026 guidelines prioritize whole food sources over isolated supplements precisely because the food matrix delivers multiple interacting nutrients that the isolated compound does not. The second compound is nattokinase, and this is where the video gets interesting for most Western audiences, because natto, the food from which nattokinase is derived, is one of the least familiar items in the Japanese diet to the outside world, and one of the most nutritionally extraordinary. Natto is a traditional Japanese fermented food made from whole soybeans that have been inoculated with a bacterium called Bacillus subtilis natto and left to ferment for approximately 24 hours. The result is a sticky, stringy food with an intense fermented aroma that most Westerners describe as pungent, and which most Japanese adults eat without hesitation, often for breakfast, over rice, or with eggs. The texture has been compared to something between overcooked pasta and soft cheese. The smell has been compared to overripe blue cheese or ammonia, depending on who you ask. And yet, in the prefectures of Japan where natto consumption is highest, Alzheimer's prevalence is lower than in regions where it is rarely eaten. This correlation has been observed consistently enough that several research groups have dedicated significant resources to understanding the mechanism. Nattokinase is an enzyme produced by Bacillus subtilis during fermentation. Its primary documented action is fibrinolytic. It breaks down fibrin, a protein involved in blood clotting. This matters for the brain in a way that is not immediately obvious, but becomes clear when you understand the current science on Alzheimer's pathology. Amyloid plaques, the protein aggregates associated with Alzheimer's disease, are surrounded by fibrin deposits. Those fibrin deposits impede blood flow through the microvasculature of the brain and contribute to the neuroinflammatory environment that drives neuronal death. Nattokinase, by dissolving fibrin, may help clear the vascular component of this process and improve cerebral blood flow to areas already beginning to suffer from reduced perfusion. Several studies, including clinical trials in adults over 60, have shown that nattokinase supplementation reduces plasma fibrinogen levels, improves blood viscosity, and in one Japanese trial produced measurable improvements in cognitive performance on standardized assessments over a 12-week period. The effect sizes are modest, not dramatic. This is not a molecule that reverses Alzheimer's in 3 months, but in a disease where slowing progression by even a meaningful fraction translates to additional years of functional independence, modest, consistent effects matter greatly. Julia was 74 when her family first noticed she was repeating herself, asking the same question twice, forgetting appointments she had kept for years. Her neurologist described it as mild cognitive impairment and projected gradual decline. An integrative physician reviewed her diet. No fatty fish, no fermented foods, a diet built largely around rice, cooked vegetables, and occasional chicken. He added fatty fish 3 times weekly, and a daily natto serving to her routine. 18 months later, her family reported the repetition had decreased noticeably. Her MMSE score had remained stable rather than declining as projected. Her neurologist could not explain the deviation from the expected trajectory. The integrative physician had a simpler explanation. Her brain was now getting what it had been missing. If you are adding fatty fish and exploring natto this week, write in the comments, "Feeding my brain what it needs." Leave a like so I know this content is reaching people who need it, and subscribe to stay with this series. The practical challenge with natto is accessibility and palatability. In Japan, it is sold in small polystyrene boxes in every convenience store and supermarket, typically in portions of 40 to 50 grams. In Western countries, it is available in Asian grocery stores and increasingly through online retailers. The taste and texture are genuinely unfamiliar and require adjustment. Many people find it more tolerable mixed into miso soup or eaten over warm rice. Others find that they adapt to it within 2 to 3 weeks of regular eating. For those who genuinely cannot access natto or cannot adapt to its sensory profile, nattokinase supplements extracted from natto are available and have been used in most clinical trials. Typical research doses range from 2,000 to 4,000 fibrinolytic units per day. These are widely available from reputable supplement manufacturers. If you are on anticoagulant medication such as warfarin, aspirin, or any blood-thinning drug, discuss nattokinase with your physician before starting, as its fibrinolytic activity can compound the effect. The vitamin K2 content of natto is also worth noting separately, because it represents one of the richest whole food sources of menaquinone 7, the form of vitamin K2 that is most bioavailable and most active in bone metabolism and arterial calcification prevention. K2 directs calcium into bones and away from arterial walls, a function entirely distinct from K1. Most Western adults are deficient in K2 because primary dietary sources have declined. One serving of natto provides several times the estimated adequate intake for K2, making it one of the most efficient single foods for addressing this widespread deficiency. Alongside its brain health benefits, the connection between K2 and brain health is emerging but compelling. Arterial calcification, which K2 deficiency promotes, reduces blood flow to the brain over time in the same way that fibrin deposits do. The combination of nattokinase's fibrinolytic activity and K2's calcification prevention activity may explain part of why natto-consuming populations show better cerebrovascular outcomes than populations eating equivalent diets without fermented soy. Now, a word on the broader dietary pattern that surrounds these two foods in Japan. Because no food operates in isolation. The traditional Okinawan diet is not simply fish and natto. It is predominantly whole, minimally processed foods, sweet potatoes, leafy vegetables, legumes, small amounts of pork, green tea, and the fish and fermented foods we have discussed. The absence of ultra-processed foods, seed oils, and excess refined carbohydrates creates a low inflammation baseline from which the brain protective effects of DHA and nattokinase are more potent. You cannot replicate the Okinawan outcome by adding sardines to a diet that is otherwise built on processed bread, industrial vegetable oil, and packaged snacks. The fish and natto are the most concentrated and specific interventions available, but they work best in a dietary context that does not actively undermine them. The 2026 guidelines address this context explicitly. The minimum effective dietary change from this video is straightforward. Add fatty fish, sardines, mackerel, or salmon 3 times per week. If natto is accessible and tolerable, add 1 serving daily. If not, consider a nattokinase supplement at the doses used in clinical research. After discussing it with your doctor, if you are on blood thinners, evaluate at 3 months, not 3 weeks. The brain changes that DHA corrects took years to develop. They respond to sustained nutritional input, not to short trials. 3 months of consistent fatty fish consumption will produce a measurable change in your omega-3 index, a blood test that reflects the DHA composition of your red blood cell membranes, and serves as a reliable proxy for brain membrane DHA content. That test is worth requesting alongside your next routine blood work if cognitive health is a priority. There is a dimension of this story that most nutrition content skips because it requires holding 2 ideas simultaneously. The brain is plastic, and it responds to input throughout life. And the brain also accumulates damage slowly over decades, in ways that become harder to reverse the longer they persist. Both are true. The plasticity is real and well documented. Neurogenesis, the production of new neurons, continues into old age in the hippocampus, the region most implicated in memory formation. DHA availability directly supports neurogenesis. Studies in both animal models and aging humans show that omega-3 supplementation increases hippocampal volume, an effect that correlates with improved performance on memory tasks. This is not a small or uncertain finding. It has been replicated independently across multiple research groups and multiple populations. The flip side is that severe, long-standing DHA deficiency produces membrane changes that take extended time to reverse, even with adequate subsequent intake. Adults over 70 who have eaten a low-fish diet for decades should not expect a 6-week fish protocol to undo what 40 years of omega-6 dominance have built. The expectation should be stabilization first, gradual improvement over months, and prevention of further decline as the primary measurable outcome in the near term. That is still an enormously valuable outcome. Slowing cognitive decline is not the same as accepting it. The difference, over 5 to 10 years, can be the difference between independent living and institutional care. The phospholipid form of DHA deserves a moment because it appears in both fish and krill, and is absorbed more efficiently than the triglyceride form found in most fish oil capsules. When DHA is delivered as a phospholipid, it is more readily incorporated into neural membranes, because the blood-brain barrier transports phospholipid-bound DHA preferentially. This is one of the reasons why eating whole fish outperforms fish oil supplements, even at equivalent DHA doses. The phospholipid packaging in whole fish flesh is the evolutionarily matched delivery vehicle for getting DHA into neural tissue. A sardine is not just a DHA capsule with bones. It is a DHA delivery system in the biological format that the human brain evolved to receive. The blood-brain barrier becomes increasingly relevant after 60. It's the gate for nutrients to brain tissue, declining with age, inflammation, and hypertension. A compromised barrier lets inflammatory molecules enter the brain, reducing beneficial nutrient efficiency. DHA and its derivatives help maintain blood-brain barrier integrity. Adequate DHA supports the barrier, allowing more DHA to reach the brain. The gut-brain axis adds another layer. Natto, a fermented food, produces Bacillus subtilis, influencing the gut microbiome. A healthy gut microbiome produces short-chain fatty acids. These cross into the bloodstream, providing anti-inflammatory effects in the brain. Gut dysbiosis, common in older adults with poor diets, links to neuroinflammation and accelerated cognitive aging. Natto delivers both nattokinase and microbial input to the gut simultaneously. This dual action makes whole food superior to isolated supplements. Selenium content in fatty fish is crucial. It's a cofactor for glutathione peroxidase, a primary antioxidant defense enzyme in the brain. The brain consumes 20% of the body's oxygen, producing oxidative byproducts. Glutathione peroxidase neutralizes these before neural damage occurs. Selenium deficiency, common in older adults, impairs this defense, accelerating oxidative damage in regions vulnerable to Alzheimer's. 3 servings of fatty fish weekly, especially sardines and mackerel, reliably maintain optimal glutathione peroxidase activity. The 2026 dietary guidelines prioritize fatty fish for cognitive aging. It delivers DHA, selenium, B12, vitamin D, omega-3 phospholipids, and protein. The brain doesn't receive nutrients one at a time. It receives them together, and they interact. The food matrix provides this interaction. One distinction needs attention: cognitive decline prevention versus Alzheimer's treatment. Everything discussed here is about prevention and slowing. Fatty fish and natto are not treatments for established Alzheimer's disease. Presenting them as such would be inaccurate and irresponsible. Research supports that dietary patterns, including these foods, link to lower disease rates, slower progression, and better cognitive function. This is a meaningful, legitimate claim, not a cure. For those concerned about their cognitive future, prevention is key. Practical summary: buy sardines or mackerel this week. Canned, packed in olive oil or water. Eat them 3 times weekly. Indefinitely. If near an Asian grocery, look for frozen natto in small polystyrene packs. Try it over warm rice with soy sauce. Give yourself 2 weeks to adjust to the texture and flavor. If not maintainable, find a reputable nattokinase supplement. Discuss the dose with your doctor, especially if taking blood thinners. Request an omega-3 index test at your next blood work appointment. The target is 8% or above, associated with the lowest risk of cognitive decline. Most Western adults are between 3 and 5%. Knowing your number gives you a baseline and a specific motivating goal beyond just eating more fish. Write down one cognitive marker that matters to you. Word finding, names, spatial navigation, concentration. Whatever dimension you want to preserve. Check it monthly. Changes are gradual and easily dismissed. A consistent reference point helps. You're managing something that takes years. Your brain deserves the same deliberate attention as your heart, blood pressure, and joints. It's asking for DHA and nattokinase. Both have been available in traditional Japanese kitchens for centuries. The 2026 Senior Food Pyramid is recovering an intervention that was always there. Is the benefit from fish and natto about specific compounds, or simply that Japanese people eat less junk? The honest answer is both. They are not separable. Protective foods work best without chronic inflammation, which comes from avoiding inflammatory foods. Every step toward a less processed baseline amplifies DHA and nattokinase protection. They are crowning elements of a brain-friendly diet. Your brain has worked since before you were born. It's the most metabolically expensive organ, asking for specific nutritional inputs in your 70s. Inputs like DHA from fatty fish and nattokinase from natto. The 2026 Senior Food Pyramid placed them at the top for this age group, not as a suggestion, but as a priority. Your brain built itself from the food you ate across your lifetime. It's still taking inventory every day. After 70, that inventory needs to be deliberate. Thank you for watching until the end. Leave a like and a comment. It helps this channel reach more families dealing with cognitive decline. The Buy Me a Coffee link is in the description if you'd like to support this work. We will see you in the next one.